they did was two things. One is they required that ships have an onboard operator 24 hours a day, and that was a good requirement. The other thing that they required, because there had been some problems with what we would call interference from experimenters that we'll call hams, that were operating on frequencies that were close enough and with power enough to interfere with some of the some of these people who were trying to work out there with the Titanic. So they required licensing. And one of the requirements for having to get a license to operate your transmitter was if it could be heard across a state line. That gave the federal government control and caused them to be able to set up licensing. The earliest license that we have from a Birmingham guy was a guy named Pop Ansley. And Pop in 1915 licensed his spark gap transmitter as 5EH. So remember that, 5EH was Pop Ansley. Anyway, just to continue just briefly, all at once there was a war and everything was shut down. Believe it or not, it was illegal to listen to your radio. They even had people had to take their antennas down. They came out and put a tag on your transmitter and took the power supply out of it if they had to. A lot of hams donated their equipment to the military just for that reason. But they really turned off the experimenters' radios for World War I because the wireless telegraphy was so important to the whole over operation of the military during that First World War. Okay, after the war, things really were great for these experimenters because, number one, there was all kinds of war surplus stuff available. Number two, there had been some significant improvements in technology of the radio industry during the World War I. So in 1919, when the experimenters and hams decided to get back on the air, they were met with a stone wall called the U.S. Navy. The Navy had decided wireless telegraphy is too important for the ships. We're going to take it over, and we're doing away with ham radio and any experimenters. The Navy's going to tightly control anything to do with transmitting on radio frequencies. Well, fortunately, we had a guy named Herbert Hoover at that time that disagreed with that. And not only that, but the American Radio Relay League, who had been established in 1914, went to Congress and also said, we've got to protect these experimenters. They've done too much already for the history and for the technology of radio, so definitely we don't want anything to happen to them. So, fortunately, the Navy did not get control of radio. Okay, we're finally going to talk about, I didn't get it.
Did not know.
We're finally going to get to talk about Alabama ham radio. And what I want to, what's that got to do with ham radio? Let me tell you. There was a young guy, his name was Billy Hood. Billy Hood got a license right after the First World War. Actually, he got it in 1921, and when the hams were allowed to get back on the air. And Billy Hood lived in the Arlington mansion in the west side of Birmingham because his mother had married a guy named Munger. And so there was this wonderful place that he lived in. He got a 1,000 watt spark transmitter to get on the air with when he got his license, 5 ADS. Guess what? He got run out of the house. That thing was so loud that you couldn't do anything else in the house except hear his radio. And so they very quickly built him a place out back in the behind the mansion, and that was his ham shack. How about that? Guess what? Billy Hood was born in 1910. 1921. He was 11 years old. He was a youngster to get it started really in ham radio, and especially with a kilowatt spark transmitter. But he was determined. Along came our friend Pop Ansley, and Pop gathered a few other hams together, and they formed a group called the Birmingham Wireless Association. They affiliated with the ARRL. They charged $1 extra for dues, for the annual dues, to get QST. So y'all imagine that. Look at QST today and what it costs. But anyway, just as a point, the Birmingham Wireless Association started in 1921. It was a very active organization. But let me give you just a quick indication of the number of hams. In 1920, there were 6 licensed hams in the Birmingham area. In 1921, it had grown to 10 licensed hams. So obviously, it wasn't a huge organization. And everything went along pretty smooth. Like I said, it was formed in 21. Went along pretty smooth until the Alabama Power Company decided to put on a radio broadcasting station to broadcast news, entertainment, and information, primarily to employees. But it was so popular and it was so powerful. It went on the air in April of 1922, and that station actually became a major entertainment for the Birmingham area. The Birmingham News ran articles on building crystal sets, but that you could listen to this broadcast station. They started broadcasting music. The power company employees got involved in it, and as you can see, they even, most of those were power company employees. Well, the president of Alabama Power Company, named Thomas Martin, all of a sudden had a problem. All these power company people loved the radio far more than they did their power company jobs. So he began to have a problem. But let me tell you, in early 1923, like I said, the station went on in April of 22. In early 1923, there was a really, really bad ice storm in the city of Birmingham. It was so bad that power lines went down everywhere, telephone lines went down, and people couldn't get out and travel. Well, guess what? WSY did not lose their power because they were located on Powell Avenue, right next door to the power company's generating plant. And guess what else? All of these people that built these crystal sets that didn't have to have power to listen to WSY. And let me tell you, if it had not been for the WSY station and people being able to listen to news and weather and everything that they needed, it was a tragic situation. But unfortunately, Thomas Martin just could not stand it that people were working for the radio or interested in the radio, not in the power company. So at the end of 1923, he decided to shut the station down. So in November, it was actually shut down. he gave all of the equipment to an agency called Alabama Polytechnic Institute in Auburn, Alabama. So all of the equipment went away. 1924, the people of Birmingham had no broadcast radio of any kind unless they stayed up late at night and had a radio that was powerful enough to listen to some of the broadcast stations from Nashville, Atlanta, Chicago, places like that. It was a very unfortunate type thing for the people in 1924. So in 1925, Ham, he was also involved with the Birmingham Wireless Association, although it had become pretty active because the spark transmitters really interfered with WSY in a bad way, so they were not too popular, obviously. Well, this Ham's name was Carlisle Bell, and Carlisle Bell applied for, he actually had, on 5th Avenue North, he had a radio repair station. He was born in 1903, so he was a fairly young guy. In 1925, he was 22 years old. But he applied to the federal government, to the Department of Commerce, and received a broadcast license with the call letters WBRC, which stood for Bell Radio Company, and became a major broadcaster in Birmingham. Things went along pretty good, except his little transmitter was only about 20 watts, and he had it in his backyard, had an antenna in his backyard, and he was mostly broadcasting phonograph records, and he got a few other things. His wife would talk on the radio some, but it really didn't replace WSY in a lot of ways, who had professional entertainers and everything else. So we rocked along during 1925. Well, in 1926, our buddy, Pop Ansley, decided that he wanted to get a broadcast station. He was going to compete with his buddy, Carlisle Bell, and they were going to have stations that were going to entertain the people in Birmingham. So he applied and received, finally, after a good bit of work, received WKBC. And y'all probably, if you're around the Birmingham area, probably don't remember that call unless you're a lot older than I am. But anyway, we'll leave that where it is right now. But remember, it was Pop Ansley that put it on. He had changed his call letters by that time to 5JO. So we had, he went from 5EH to 5JO. Okay. They rocked along for a couple of years. So Birmingham had WKBC and WBRC broadcasting. Both of them ran about 20, 30, 40 watts of AM, something like that. And things really needed to be jacked up quite a bit. And 1928, it happened. And here's what did happen. The first thing was that WBRC, our friend Carlisle Bell, the Ham, got a $2,000 investment in his radio system, and that's equivalent to over $100,000 in today's dollars. So he rushed out and bought a 250 watt transmitter and moved his antennas out to the site that the investor owned, and the investor was a guy named M.D. Smith, and M.D. Smith actually owned a company called Birmingham Tent and Awning Company, and he had had enough real estate for him to put up a big antenna for WBRC. Okay, our friend Pop Ansley sold WKBC to R.B. Grohl's Furniture Company. They went out and bought a 100 watt transmitter and put it on the air and had studios in their furniture building, and they were able to really do some serious entertaining, and where Pop Ansley had a full-time job. He worked for the crane company that made plumbing supplies, and he would come home from work at 5 or 6 o'clock and turn on his transmitter and play some records or something like that, but it just wasn't what they really wanted to do for Birmingham broadcasting. The biggest thing that happened was WSY came back to Birmingham, only it had different call letters. This time it was WAPI, which the Alabama Polytechnic Institute had gotten the call letters in Auburn and put it on the air there. It was a 5-kilowatt broadcaster. So 1928 for the broadcasting industry was really a big thing. Okay, here's something else that happened that was really significant. The hams all lost their license. Every single one of them, 5EH, 5JO, 50, 580S, they were all gone. Because Alabama moved from the 5th call area to the 4th call area. And when they moved in 1928, everybody had to get a new license and new call letters and new everything to operate. And our friend, Pop Ansley, got the call W4RE. Our friend, another friend of ours who was in our organization, Claude Gray, got W4CX, and there were a bunch of others that happened at that time. There were one person I'm going to talk about just briefly is a guy named Jeff Bain. He had W4AAQ, and then there was another one. Well, there were just a bunch of them. Pete Sides, we also had as a member in our group. He had W4AUP, and what happened with Pete was W4AUP, when he passed away, became part of the Alabama Historical Radio Society at his request. That's what he wanted, and that's what took place. Okay, I have finally gotten up to the beginning of the Birmingham Amateur Radio Club. I know it took a while to get here, but the club was formed in 1930 for the purpose of amateurs, and for the amateurs to actually be able to have a voice with the American Radio Relay League, and with also the other clubs around the country, and it was a really very popular organization. In 1929, before the club was formed, there were 26 hams, and in 1931 there were 43 hams in the city of Birmingham, or in the Birmingham area. So you can see it grew rather rapidly. Let's move on here. The club was so dynamic and so important that in 1933, when the AHRS was looking for a place to hold their Southeastern Convention, they chose Birmingham. And these are the attendees to the Birmingham Amateur Radio Club sponsoring of the AHRL 1933 convention. This man here I'm going to be talking about, his name is Adams. And this man here I'm going to talk about a little bit, his name is Jeff Bain. I mentioned him just a minute ago. But Adams was the president of the club, and Jeff Bain was the secretary of the club to start with. But the club first started meeting, and a guy, Mac Godwin, W4ADL, had room in his basement to have some club meetings, and they met once a week for about 5 or 6 weeks, and outgrew that real quick and decided to move to the YMCA, which they did. And in the YMCA they had plenty of room. this is the actual program of the convention as it was held in Birmingham. There's one name, I don't know if I can show it to you easily, but Pop Amsley, that we've talked about quite a bit, that had WKBC signed on the far right there, and that sheet up there, he was definitely there. As I mentioned, the club was doing all kinds of things. There was a balloon race, and I did not realize that that Birmingham had sponsored a hot air balloon race, but in 1934 they had a hot air balloon race in Birmingham, and they needed somebody to help provide communications. Well, guess who they asked? The Birmingham Amateur Radio Club, and they did provide communications. In order to provide these communications, they actually got the call letters W4CUE, which they still have, and you probably recognize that. Okay, the club continued to grow, and it grew so fast that they needed even more space. They had the YMCA, so they built a clubhouse, and they built it on Goat Hill. Now, who knows where Goat Hill is? Anyway, Goat Hill is on Red Mountain, overlooking the city of Homewood, Alabama. And this was no small building. The building actually was about 20 by 40 feet. It had two big rooms. One was the radio room, and the other was the meeting room. Claude Gray's wife said that the ladies loved to come to the meeting because they'd sit out in the meeting room and play cards while the men played with their radios. So I guess that's possibly something that happened. Okay, the club in 1936 decided, and to me that was a Hamfest. They didn't consider it, they considered it a convention. But they actually met at the Birmingham brand new $1 million airport, which was bigger than Atlanta's airport at that time. And these, see how nice they're all dressed up? We don't do that anymore. But they all dressed up so nice, looked so nice, and even offered airplane rides for $1. So that was a big deal. In 1937, Birmingham did not have any kind of a Hamfest, so the Birmingham group was invited to Valparaiso, Florida, on the coast or close to it, to the India Atlantic Hotel by a ham named Jimmy Long. Not the Jimmy Long we know, unfortunately, but W4KB was the Jimmy Long, and he encouraged the hams to come to Valparaiso to the India Atlantic Beach Hotel. And it was a big gathering, not just Birmingham, but there was Mobile and Montgomery and some out of Georgia and even some out of Mississippi and several out of Florida that came to that. Somebody wrote that this was actually the first Birmingham Fest. This was at the National Guard Armory out by Legion Field, and it was actually a Hamfest. And there's two of the tickets that, I don't know if those were winning tickets, but there were two of the tickets that were given out at the Hamfest. Okay. What happened next, of course, was World War II. This is a guy named ACK, W4ECI, who opened ACK Radio Company after the war. And this is him operating his radio station, or his radio ham station, at his farm on Shades Mountain. He had bought quite a few acres. It was almost 20 acres of land on Shades Mountain, and he had his ham set up there. He was very active in the club for years. In fact, he was the one that he was a typewriter salesman, but he was the one that normally got the Ham's permission to operate at Avondale Park for field day at the pavilion there. So the World War II came along, shut it all down. So the Hams, at least they could listen this time, but they couldn't transmit during the war. And the ham radio was pretty quiet. Well, in 1947, there was a war surplus building moved on the campus of Birmingham Southern College. And that building was eventually given to the maintenance department, but the Hams got permission not just to meet in this building at the Birmingham Southern College, but also to set up their W4CUE transmitters and antennas. In fact, somebody contacted us just recently about all these antenna poles that were down near the maintenance section in Birmingham Southern College, and what were they all about? And they were from W4CUE, which was interesting. The club was very active at that time. There were close to 100 active hams that got back on the air after World War II. There was a lot of people that were just fascinated with all of this war surplus that was coming out. A lot of airplane radios, and some of you older folks might remember an ARC 5 or something of that sort, but it was really a big unloading of a lot of equipment that was really used in a lot of different ways during World War II. In 1951, there was a major train wreck at Woodstock, Alabama. And Woodstock is down near Tuscaloosa. And 2 passenger trains collided head-on a single track. And let me tell you, it was a mess. Well, several members of the Birmingham Amateur Radio Club decided to go down and help out with communications, because the police radios and the highway patrol radios were very high frequency and didn't carry very far, and there were very few telephone lines. Well, the hams were turned away. They would not allow them because they were not properly government-type employees. So they came back to Birmingham, and the Jefferson County Sheriff said, look, I'll just make all of you deputies, and you'll definitely be able to. So he deputized 11 Birmingham Amateur Radio Club hams to be deputies and to go down, and 5 of them did. And they provided health and welfare traffic that was just absolutely unmatched any other way that they could do it. So it was a significant thing at the time. It was really written up in a lot of ways in the newspaper and a lot of things like that. Okay, the Birmingham Club decided after World War II to finally start the Hamfest back again. There had not been a Hamfest since 1939. And you say, how did they get the pictures on the front of the Hamfest bulletin? Well, what they did, they had a picnic at Roebuck Community Center out on 1st Avenue North in 1953, and it was so well attended and everybody had such a good time that they decided to have a Hamfest out at the Roebuck Community Center in 1954. I might mention that was the first Hamfest that I attended as a ham, and I really enjoyed it. It was very interesting, and it was held, like I said, at the Roebuck Community Center, which was a pretty good sized place. And that also was the first citizenship award that was given out in 1954. So we'll be giving a citizenship award out, the club will, this afternoon, and that It actually started in 1954. Let me tell you about this Hamfest. This was a significant move for the club. They moved from this Roebuck Community Center to the State Fairgrounds out in West Birmingham. And they had all kinds of space out there. They had a building that they could operate out of. And let me just give you a couple of statistics from that were really, I think, very significant. It was attended by 1,518 people. That's a lot of people to a Hamfest. We don't get that many now. There was 776 of them that were licensed amateurs. There was, and this was surprising to me, $4,000 in prizes given away at that Hamfest. Now that is significant because in today's dollars, we can't come anywhere near to matching that today. And the other thing was there were 866 meals served. And if any of you ever went to the Birmingham Fest at the fairgrounds, you'll know that the meals that they served were absolutely fantastic and really special because it was fresh cooked barbecue right there. In 1958, the Hams decided that they had better recognize the ladies that attended the Hamfest. So this was when they got all the ladies that they could find that were at the Hamfest in one spot and took their picture. And believe it or not, well, I've been able to confirm that 6 of those ladies were licensed hams, and I bet you double that if we knew. But anyway, that to me was a significant thing. Okay, the club had to move. They've been at Birmingham Southern since, like I said, almost 10 years, or right at 10 years. And they were told that that building was really put there for the maintenance people at Birmingham Southern College, and that the Hams really needed to find someplace else. So they were able to discover on 3rd Avenue North a fire station that was not being used as a fire station anymore. And they actually worked out a deal to take over the 2nd floor of that fire station and put up antennas and move all the equipment. And there's a picture here of 2 of the, well, actually 3 pictures of the ham radio setup, and it was really significant. The antennas they were able to put up were very good, and it was a good location for the club for almost 10 years after that. In 1965, let me point out something else. If you look at the club newsletter there, it's called Birmingham Beam. And you look at the newsletter there, it's called Attic Static. And believe it or not, there's about 4 or 5 other iterations of that newsletter that's called something different. We have brought today some handout, actually it's some duplicate stuff that we are going to offer if anybody wants it, to pick up some of it in memory of what Birmingham Amateur Radio Club has been all about. But the 1965 Hamfest was also at the State Fairgrounds. It was a big success, like the 56 one was, and was well attended. Okay, in 1971, I was president of the club, and we had become fairly active with a bunch of the old timers in the club from the pre-1940s Hams, and they were still active and supportive for the club, and we wanted to recognize them for what they had done for the club. So we started what we called the BARC Old Timers Banquet, It was at the Holiday Inn on Highway 31, just south of Vestavia, which is no longer there. But we really had a crowd. You can see quite a few people in the picture at the Holiday Inn. Well, on the left are all of those that were licensed prior to World War II that were still active in the club. And one of them was named Pete Sides, and I've mentioned him before, W48UP. And we asked all of them if they could to bring a piece of old equipment with them that they could show off. Well, you can see Pete's picture over here and his spark coil receiver, not spark coil receiver, but his varicoupler receiver that was a Bristol receiver that he brought for everybody to see. I thought it was kind of neat. The Hamfest that year was well attended, and it actually was still being held at the state fairgrounds. And there was a group of us that decided, because Heathkit was so popular at that time, to build the first prize for the Hamfest. And we gave away a Heathkit kilowatt single sideband complete station for the #1 prize at the Hamfest. As you can see, it had the SB200 amplifier and the SB102 or 101 transceiver. It was a big deal, but we were rather proud to give that away as first prize.
Oh, well, you can't let you get away with not mentioning. Anyone want to care to guess who this handsome gentleman is?
With hair.
With hair?
What about the guy next to him?
If you know Johnny Outland, he's in the very middle. And Dave didn't tell you, he built all that Heathkit stuff for the Hamfest. So.
Thank you, Robert. Okay. Also, 1971, there was a major explosion at the Norris Yards, which is the railroad yards out on the east side of Birmingham. And it was a ammonium nitrate explosion, and there was a plant out there that was turning out ammonium nitrates. The Birmingham Amateur Radio Club really shined in providing communications for that. But not only that, but two of the members of the club that were both doctors, Dr. Bill Hammock and Dr. Charles Crow, were on site in just a matter of minutes and able to provide a lot of help. And I don't think there was a single death from that, but that would have been really a big deal. But that was 1971. I'm going to move kind of fast through the rest of it because we're kind of running out of time, and I know Stephen has something he wants to do, and so does Robert. So what I want to do is just mention in 1986, the Birmingham Fest was moved to the brand new Jefferson BJCC, Jefferson Civic Center. And this is some pictures that were taken at the BJCC. Our founder, Don Kresge, who founded the Alabama Historical Radio Society, had a table at that, and that table was always crowded. He was an excellent promoter and had a bunch of old radios that everybody was quite interested in. In 1994, we were still at the Civic Center. We had a very successful Hamfest. Then is Bill Levy, which some of you know, WB4FAY, and he was building cubicle quad beams at that time and selling them at the Hamfest, and that's why I have that picture. This is the 2001 Hamfest, and if you'll note on the top right, Jimmy Long, our Jimmy Long. On the left, lower one, Martin Jew, Let me tell you, and this was when we were first out at the temple and had a really nice place out there, but it was a big Hamfest. It was a good place to have Hamfest. What I really have tried to do is to help y'all have an understanding why it has been so important to me to have been a member of this group. As I pointed out, my first Hamfest was 1954. I was licensed in 53. But it has meant a lot to me. And I think it has to a lot of other people too. And I just wanted you to recognize that BARC has not just a history, but has a lot of things that it can be very proud of that has taken place during the years that it's been an active organization. I want to thank Robert Kane especially. Robert has scanned over 1,000 documents of history for the Birmingham Amateur Radio Club. And we have brought some duplicate stuff to give away if anybody is interested. I want to get Stephen to come up here and tell you about our prize, our door prize, and show it to you.
Yeah, we have a small door prize today, and I'll give everybody a ticket that doesn't have one. Just a little bit of history on some of our door prizes that we use. We've done it for like the last 4 or 5 years. We had a gentleman contact us from Wisconsin. He had traveled around the world building power stations, and he said the only thing I could collect that I could get in my luggage was radios. So he collected radios, and he had like 350 what they call novelty radios that he collected around the world. And he wanted to donate them to our organization, which he did. He boxed them all up in real nice boxes and brought them, rented a U-Haul truck and brought them to Birmingham. And so we've still got them down at our organization. So I'll give some tickets out to everybody who doesn't have one, and we'll give this radio away. It's just a little small novelty radio. This is the time back in the 50s and 60s where everybody built radios. Whether you were in the car business or whatever business you were in, you made radios. So let me give those tickets out.
Here that I didn't introduce, I really ought to mention my wife Celeste is here. My grandson Brandon Cisco is here. My great-grandson William David Cisco is here. So that's
Reach in there and grab a ticket. All right, give us the number off there.
618674.
You know who won that one? That was yours.
So that's his ticket.
How about
I couldn't have been more Very good.
you want to talk about.
Well, the extra flyers and stuff are up here, please feel free to grab them.
Okay, we've got a whole table full of duplicate Hamfest flyers of, actually there's a whole bunch of lists of members. Golly, there's some interesting stuff up here. If anybody wants any of it, it'll all go in the garbage if you don't get it. I want to thank you again for attending. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully you can tell some of the other people out there that Birmingham definitely is a good ham club.